evening and welcome to Meticulous Moments. My name is Juanita Kapp. You can reach me at meticulousmacarons@gmail.com or find me on LinkedIn. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, I've had the wonderful privilege to meet a wide array of fantastic individuals. These individuals have truly touched my life in so many positive ways. Amongst this group of people, there are authors, public speakers, life coaches, poets, leaders, and visionaries. They are the unsung heroes of our time. Therefore, I decided to start the Meticulous Moments movement out of a sense of my gratitude. It is my way of giving back to the community. Let us share and reshare their stories in an effort to build a better society. Good evening and welcome to the Meticulous Moments podcast, where we facilitate community upliftment through leadership development. And today we have the wonderful privilege of spending time with the amazing Tice. What a wonderful individual he is. Awesome, stunning, strong leader, good friend. Here are some more details about Chris. Chris first began his leadership journey early in life by earning the Eagle Scout Award, the highest achievement or rank attainable through the Boy Scouts of America, BSA. Utilizing lessons learned through life and a desire to serve others, he continued his leadership journey through sales, business, and eventually firefighting within the city of Wichita. Due to persistent injuries, Chris took a leap of faith by retiring early from the fire department and becoming a full-time coach and speaker. He now fully seeks to explore and live in the greatness God has called him to and created him for, and inspires others to do the same. I had an absolutely magnificent interview with Chris. He's such an open-spirited person, he's such a giving leader, and he just creeps into the hearts of many. He's really someone that I look up to, and he really opened up my mindset about so many concepts of leadership. I invite you to enjoy this wonderful interview with us, and I would like to say thank you, Chris, for your knowledge and your experience, for making time for the Meticulous Moments podcast audience. And with that, we give over to our very, very special treasured guest, Tice. Good evening, Meticulous Moments audience. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another vibrant session here at the Meticulous Moment podcast, where we facilitate community upliftment through leadership development. And this evening, we have the wonderful privilege of spending time with the amazing Tice. How are you, Chris?
Fantastic. How are you doing, Juanita? And thank you.
I'm doing so well. I'm looking forward to this interview so much. I'm so psyched that you are here.
I'm excited to be here. This is incredible. And kudos to you. We were just talking about it before she hit record, but it's either early or late, however she wants to look at it, because we are on opposite sides of the planet. And it's a joy to know that, what God brings together is always going to be amazing. And I'm excited at this opportunity. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for everyone that would get to listen to this and hear this. And I just pray blessings over us and over anyone who hears what we have to say tonight.
Amen. Thank you very much. And that sets the tone in such a lovely manner for the session. Amen. I can't agree with you more. Now, we've had a virtual coffee. We've, talked on Messenger. We've been on the same Zoom calls, and I got to know you through all of it. But would you like to introduce yourself to the audience for those members who are not acquainted with you yet?
Sure. My name is Tice. Kind of my formal bio is I'm one in whom Christ dwells. I believe in Jesus and his saving grace, of which I have been saved multiple times over due to my own follies that I've been a part of. And I'm an early retired firefighter. I had persistent injuries and just got to a point where I had to pray. And At the time, she's now 5, but my 2-year-old daughter wanted me to pick her up to tell her goodnight. And when I went to pick her up, my back went out to the point I couldn't even tie my own shoes. And so I had to make a very, very courageous decision. And my wife and I were talking, and of course, I had to call in sick. I couldn't go to work. And I had been in and out of different physical therapies. I've had 2 knee surgeries on both of my knees, just clean outs. I've had my ankle cut on twice, and they were starting to threaten for back surgery as well, especially if I was going to keep being a firefighter. And so I thought about it. I thought that just doesn't sound like something I should do. And so also recognizing the fact that at this point in my career and with this injury, I was a danger, not even just to myself for future injuries. I was a danger to my coworkers, who I swore to protect and help. I was a danger to the citizens I swore to protect, as well as to my family. And so it really got kind of weighty on me. And one of the things that all the surgeons, all the doctors, all the physical therapists, all the chiropractors kept saying was, I can fix you for now, but. And I got really sick of hearing that. And I was like, I really got to take my health in a better situation than this. And so one night I could not sleep, and just plugged in the headphones, started listening to praise and worship music. Thank God for the headphones, because it reminded me to stay quiet, because it was 3 a.m. in my house with 2 little children and a sleepy wife. And I got on my knees in one of the hardest parts of the house and started praying. And I just said, God, I don't know what to do. And I didn't quite hear anything. And I'm not the most patient or still person on planet Earth. And so I just said, you know what, God, either I'm going to go do this or you're going to show me. And I went to stand up, and with still being hurt with my back, my left knee gave out, which is my bad knee of the 2. And so I went hardcore, which is what I need. I can be very, very stubborn. And I took a hard hit to the floor on my knees, and of course hurt my back. And right then and there, he gave me a message that tomorrow, being in a few hours with a new physical therapist, that if I hear, I can fix you for now, but you're done. I mean, I was loud and clear. And so sure enough, the next afternoon, I went to the physical therapist. I actually, when I was sharing my story with her and telling her everything, I was listing off the exercises before she could. And she said, well, she goes, obviously, and in my own words, as a joke, you're a lifer to this. And I said, I can't keep doing that. She goes, well, I can fix you for now, but.
Oh, yes.
Which also happened to be what was supposed to be my regular shift day, which I was still off injured for. And so I went home and I looked at my wife and I said, can we do this? This being the company that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And she said, yes, we can. You can't even tie your own shoes. And I couldn't. I legitimately and this happened in February/March in Kansas, which is where I live, and it can get rather cold here. Yeah. And so I was either wearing flip-flops everywhere, or I had to have her or my oldest son tie my shoes for me. And I know there are people who have it way worse than I do, but I also was facing the possibility of making it worse if I didn't make a different decision. And so I called my uncle, who helped me get on the job, and told him, and he, in a loving way, laughed and said, I've seen you try and get out of a chair, Chris. I understand. And I from the heart, was more worried about disappointing him, because he was my hero. Now, multiple levels. One is just a loving uncle who's always helped me out. I've had a lot of family help over the years, but also he was the firefighter, growing up. And I got to go to the station when my aunt would watch me and see what he did and see the trucks. And as a little kid and hear what he did. And then, of course, as I got older, learning more. And then he helped me get on. And he said, Chris, he goes, your time is done. It's okay. Call your chief. Let him know. So I did that and left. And prior to all that, my wife and I were putting together our company, which is Eagle Fire Enrichment. We are a leadership solutions company. I focus mainly on communication, making it effective, as well as the training and development of not just the leaders themselves, but of those within the organization, and a focus on safety and crisis management, which all stems together from my experience as a firefighter and I've been in leadership one way or another for the past 20 years. And so God has really put that on my heart to be able to do. And so apparently my plan to do it part-time on my days off as a firefighter was not God's plan. And here I am doing it full-time. And the second part of Eagle Fire Enrichment is inspirational speaking. And it's sharing these stories and sharing what God has done and bringing people together to just have a unified smile, make us stronger, make us better, and for a better life and a better community. So that's really the much longer bio than I originally planned on saying. So yeah, it's a blessing to say the least.
It is, and I can see how God, guided you through the process, and He really knows each of us, personally, and He knows how to work with us. And I was thinking while you were, giving your bio and telling us the background, which is good because we need to know the detail. Details are good. People want to hear these things, they want to get real. And what I was thinking was that, and I wrote it in one of the questions that you're the first. I've seen firefighters before. I've watched YouTube and there's movies and everything, but you're the first firefighter I've ever met. And I really felt since the first time that we had that virtual coffee, you are the voice to the firefighters. I've never heard anything from their perspective because it is a leadership role, like you've mentioned. People don't necessarily think of it that way. I mean, we have a televisionized idea of what it is, but it's leadership and it's hardcore and it's courageous, like you mentioned, and you do so much for the community. So what was your specific role in the years that you were a firefighter?
So as far as rank is concerned, I was a firefighter. So in my department and in many departments, it's close to this kind of a paramilitary idea as firefighter or private. And then senior private is based more on just your time on the job. But if you're the oldest one there, then clearly you're the senior. But the next rank up is lieutenant and then captain. So the lieutenant really kind of tells the crew what's going on. They're in charge of the truck they're on. And then if you have multiple trucks, of course, you have multiple crew members. Your captain is in charge of the entire station. Okay. And then next up is battalion chief, who's in charge of a bunch of stations. And then it goes on up to division chief, which they're over an entire area. Deputy chief, there's only a couple of those. And then the fire chief, which is at the top. So I stayed a firefighter. I did attempt to get promoted. I got skipped over twice, which is one reason why I speak to its leadership. And you highlighted this, Juanita, so it made me remember to say this is leadership is not just about rank, title, and position.
Yes, amen to that.
And I would even tell my rookies that, hey, listen, because I was an acting lieutenant, so I did have a supervisor role, or even as a senior firefighter, or even the drivers are looked up too. But just, I'd always tell them, listen, all of us ultimately have the same emblem on our shirt, which was our, the city's logo. And at any point in time, someone can ask you a question and you're going to have to lead into that question of what you say and how you represent yourself, especially in the community. And, they always told us at our graduation ceremony that you're a firefighter 24/7, whether you're on the truck or not, because when people hear these things and they find out, they're going to ask you questions and they do put you up on a little bit more of a pedestal. So it's not always just about the rank, title, and position, but for the most part, I was driver. I lots of different roles and responsibilities in that. But, the bigger thing and the bigger picture in this as a leader was even when I didn't get promoted, I had several people reach out to me and said, you should have gotten it. And I said, that was in God's hands. When he closes one door, he opens another one. And the last time I got skipped was a year before I left. And so I always told everyone, I was like, listen, at that point, if I would have gotten it and then left, there's someone else that would not have gotten it that deserved it, because all those they passed me up for were worthy. Who am I to say I deserved it more than this person? And I don't do that because, especially in an alpha field like that, and the amount of incredible talent that we have on our department and the people that they picked up, I just, who was I to say, I deserved it more than them? I didn't believe that. But I did look at the fact that the impact that I had on the people who were calling me, let alone the impact they had on me, saying, hey, you should have gotten it. I'd follow you in anywhere. I'd go with you anywhere. If you ever need me, call me. That's the brother and sisterhood that exists as firefighters. And that was more important to me than ever getting the promotion. Because in a way I kind of promoted myself. The only thing really I missed out on was wearing a different color of helmet and getting a pay raise. And I didn't care about that. I didn't. It was about the crews that I worked with. It was about keeping each other safe. It was about being willing to accept that responsibility and that liability in that position.
And God works in mysterious ways. As you're speaking, I'm just feeling authentic leadership. Just getting to the gist of being a leader, being a person in society that's helping. It doesn't matter what level we are at, what rank we carry. I said to someone yesterday, I was in a summit, and I believe it was Mark Cox that was presenting, and I said in the chat, and he was talking about the black belts that he was grading and everything, and he mentioned that some people just do martial arts longer than other people, and that the belts are connected to the time that you do it. And I chatted in the chat function, and I said, yes, because the belts don't really indicate skill always. It indicates how long you've been practicing martial arts. So I've seen people start out that are new, that excel. They are even better than people that have done it for that, for a longer time, but they still an early belt in some of the divisions. So I pull that through to life and to leadership. And I also pull it through to the Bible, because the Bible says the whole body is important. Whatever function you fulfill, if you're the eye or if you're the hands or if you're the feet, the body can't function without all its parts. So, it's the same then. I learned something tonight, because I never knew that in the department, the firefighting department, that it's ranked almost like the military, it seems, because I heard captains and I heard I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I kind of get on my soapbox when it comes to rank, title, and position. It does hold its place. It holds its place in society. It holds its place in military. It holds its place in so many. Even in the home. If you think about a mother and a father and parents over children, even aunts and uncles, grandparents. Even my neighbors, my kids know if they're an adult, they're to respect them as an adult. And it's the same way. It's the same way, in my opinion, in the fire department, that you have your seniors for a reason, but also understanding that we are there to function together. And my point to that is some of the guys who called me were guys who had twice the amount of time on the job as I did. They were my seniors.
Yeah.
And they're the ones calling me saying, hey, no, you've done a great job. And these were the very guys that taught me most of what I knew. And then, you also have the seniors that in a good way would also be willing to test an officer. Yeah. There were times that I went to make certain decisions as the officer, and my senior would look at me, are you sure? And I was raised to sit back and go, well, this person clearly has experience, or he's seeing something that I don't, he or she. Yeah. And I'd look at it, well, what do you think? And we would make it work. And, pending the situation and the urgency of it, how quick that decision had to be made, ultimately it's still on me. It's still on me. And that's the biggest difference with the ranks, is the responsibility that comes with it. Yeah, we may do something as a team, but who's the first person they're going to ask from the top? They're going to ask you. And you have to be willing to accept that. And you take that responsibility for your crew members as well. But you have to have, when you look at leadership, you have to have some type of hierarchy. You have to have some kind of a ranking system. Where I get hung up is when people only care about that. When they, a lot of times rank is worn on your collar, and they start going, look at me, I'm in charge. Time out. You just lost the respect there. And so, and I get there's times you may have to do that, but whether it, even in martial arts, like you were mentioning with the different belts and things, I've seen some white belts lead, some blue belts, brown belts, things like that. Not necessarily in technique, but just in how we interact with one another. Or, I look at, I was helping a young person in martial arts, and I didn't rank up or belt up. He actually was, because he tested. I didn't. I'd made a choice not to, and mostly due to the injuries. And there was actually a couple of things that when we were talking, he said, have you thought about teaching from this perspective? And I hadn't. And it was just something that he thought of. He said, what do you think about this? I said, well, let's try it. Let's try it. And we had a blast that night. I'll never forget that. It was an eye opener, not just from a martial arts perspective, but how I work with my kids, how I worked as a because I was still a firefighter at the time, and how I do it now as a leadership coach and consultant, how I teach other leaders.
Yeah.
Listen to your people.
Yeah, that's very important. That's very important, and that shines through with you, because I've seen you know, on the Zooms, and I've seen you interact with other leaders. I also follow you on social media, and there is just the energy, there is a vibe there, that it's strong leadership, and people latch onto you. They love that because you validate them, you love them, you reach out to them. Everything you do is to uplift them, and that is noticed, and that's very, very important, and it's very needed, because I think where corporate companies fall short is sometimes it's just about the goal and not about the people. And I always tell them that's the wrong way around. You first work with your people, and then naturally everything will fall into place for your goal. Stop worrying about the end result. Work with your people, know them personally. And I know that you know the people that you work with personally. You know the people that you interact with personally, because that's been my experience. We've shared, and it's not just oh yes, met you, there you go. It's always about upliftment and where can we, do this and that. And I like that dynamic. So I wanted to ask you, in the workplace, I know firefighters have a very, very difficult, I'm sure, I don't know firsthand, but I must imagine that there are many things that happen. How do firefighters keep up that morale? Because it's such a strenuous job. There's injuries. I'm sure you've gone through traumatic events. How do you, as a team, just keep the morale going and stay positive?
You actually answered your question, but I will expand upon it. Is exactly that. It's morale, it's team, it's getting through it, it's talking about it. A lot of people always ask me, what do you miss most about being a firefighter? Of course, I miss the way I helped people, putting out the fires. It's what we do. It's what we did. I mean, my title's literally firefighter. So going in and putting those out, knowing that we did our job the best that we could. And then something else I miss, though, and this is a very, very important component. And you think about all those shows, YouTube videos, movies, and everything else, you always see something common in the fire station. It's the dinner table. It's the dinner table. That dinner table is not just for eating food. That is where we solve all the world's problems. Wow. That is where we come together as a crew and this was another time in my life where rank, title, and position just didn't matter, because in that moment, it does not matter. Yeah, true. It is about the person who, may have experienced an event, and it's not just on the job. We, especially here for us, we're 24 on, 48 off. So for a third of our life, we live at the station. We live with that crew or crews, depending on, getting moved around to different stations. But no matter what, if there was something pressing, or even if it was just general information, hey guys, just so you know, the department's coming out with this, it was the dinner table. And if you had that traumatic event, we would come to the table. And then we also had different teams in place, critical incident, stress debrief teams that could come and talk to the crew, that they were trained specifically to discuss these matters. And they were our own crew members. So we know, one, we'd be comfortable with that, but they'd be understanding, not everybody can understand what it's like to see the things that firefighters see. And so to have the camaraderie that we have together, I've traveled around the nation. I've been to a couple different spots in the world, and anywhere I've gone, I run into firefighters and we get to talking. And that's usually one of the big things that always comes up is you've always got a seat at the dinner table. And it's just, that's a huge part of it, but it is about, talking with one another, sharing the experiences and making sure that people are right. I remember my first traumatic event, and I needed a minute to myself, which my officer, I had a great officer that allowed me to do that. He said, once you're done, he made me promise him that I was okay. And I told him I was, and I processed it on my own for a second. And then he said, as soon as you're done, he goes, I want you to come into the day room, which is kitchen/TV rooms where the dinner table is. And I walked in there and everybody was sitting at the table. And he said, no such thing as rank, title, positions. I was a rookie. He said, no such thing as rank, title, position. Open up. And we talked about it and in a way that would help process and things like that. So that's the biggie, is really just talking. And if you're struggling beyond that, reach out for help, reach out to those that can help you. So that could be a counselor, that could be going to a forum in which we had different offerings for professional counseling, things like that. We had our critical incident teams, things like that. But even just having your own officers, your own seniors to talk to, that was huge for us.
That's amazing. I'm seeing it play off in my mind. I'm seeing how they're waiting for you and, inviting you to sit down and to digest and just to articulate what you are feeling. That is amazing to hear that, to learn what happens behind the scenes. And I love the fact, and I respect the fact so much, that you are a family man. And I really feel that's also something important for people out there to see. Because I always commend people when they are family orientated. And how has being a firefighter made you, honed your leadership skills at work and at home and with your family? How has that kind of changed you for the better?
I think one of the things being a firefighter does is it really makes you appreciate your time. There's times that we'd miss holidays, we'd miss birthdays. You try and celebrate them as best you can, but it's not the same as being home. And then, since you're gone, in our case here, since you're gone a third of the time, you realize a lot of life misses you by. I mean, you do everything you can to be active, but, there are just times that your family just have to understand, I can't even make a phone call right now because I'm on a call or an alarm. And there's times my oldest son, who's in that picture behind my head in the white T-shirt there, I don't know how many people can see that, but he's 20 now. And he was the only one there's a little girl in the helmet and then a little boy down on the floor in my coat. But Bradley would be the only one to truly remember what it was like for dad to be gone. And there was times I couldn't call him and tell him goodnight. Yeah. There were times that I did not get to see him in the morning to send him off on the bus. And so I think the biggest appreciation that I got out of that is the time, and that just understanding that those moments in that time that you have together, you got to make the most of it, because it goes by so stinking fast. Like I said, the one in the white T-shirt there, I'm trying to think, he was freshman in high school, I think, in that picture. Now he's 20, and he actually just moved to, for the most part, another state to take a job. Wow. And I had to have a sad dad moment today. And then, I see these pictures and everything else. And then I look at the two littles. There's a 13-year age gap between the boys, and then 15 between the oldest and the youngest. And it just really makes you appreciate that time. And then also just looking at, how we would interact with one another. It wasn't just about, fighting fire and calls. It was about life together, and we would share in life together. We'd invite each other to birthday parties together. And, if there's something you're struggling with, it didn't have to just be on the job. It was, hey, I need to talk about this, or, hey, I got this going on, what would you do? Or there was, how my kid's doing this, at school, someone else chime in and go, oh, that's nothing. My kid was doing this, and make each other feel better about the situation. And that's, I think, the number one thing there, we're doing it now, is just we knew how to divulge around each other and talk to each other. Yeah. We also knew how to have some comedic relief, and we're, smiling is the antidote to everything. To me, laughter is such a medicinal emotion for us that I think we should do more. And that was something I really learned to appreciate, especially here at the home, because seeing the things that I would see, really made me appreciate how good I've got it. And I don't mean to say that in a cliche way or an offensive way to anybody, but there are things you do see that just really just make you hug your family a little tighter. And so, and it's not just about fighting the fires. It's about life in and of itself. Beautiful.
That sacrifices that you make to save others. That time that you often gave up, but I can hear from the way that you rendered that you brought that to the audience, that you always did your best. You made the time, and when it was possible, you were there.
Yeah, and you just, and that's not just firefighting. I mean, if you're somebody that's in business, Make that time. If I get it, we've got money to make, especially because at the time of this recording, the world is experiencing some massive issues right now. And I don't speak to that lightly. I get it. There's the hustle and grind and things, but don't miss out on the most precious moments of life. That really can crush you when you get older. And that's my big thing is I don't want to live with regrets. I have some for sure. I've made my mistakes as I started off this interview with. We all do. We're all sinners saved by grace. But at the same time, I don't want one of my biggest regrets to be is that I look back on my life and didn't see my kids grow up. And if that's something you're experiencing, this comes from the inspirational speaker in me and my talks and what I do is I speak about forgiveness.
Yeah.
You have to be able to learn how to forgive yourself. No matter what, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Yeah. And so, but here's the thing. Today is now. Today is now. Yesterday could be too late. Tomorrow isn't here yet. So make the most of today. And if that means asking for forgiveness and forgiving yourself, forgiving those that have wronged you, then we got to do it. And that was something else that I really took from a lot of the guys. It just, we do life together. And so if we're going to do that, then let's make the most of it.
Amen to that. I mean, there's not a single person on this planet that does not have regrets. I will never believe that if someone tells me. We all make mistakes. That's why the Bible says we all fall short of the glory of God. That's why we need him so desperately. I love that.
Amen. Amen. That's one of my favorite verses. I just couldn't think of it until you said it.
It's my lifeline.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just the thing is, I was thinking of Ecclesiastes 4:9 while I was talking, and this kind of really just was the epitome of firefighters for me was two are better than one, because if one should fall, the other could help him or her up. And I don't believe that just as firefighters. I think we can do that with one another. And that's why I brought up there, other people, in businesses, when I'm working with executives or I'm working with management, or different people who are like, I got to put in this many hours and I got to do this and I got to do that. It's like, I got to be honest with you, you actually don't have to. Let's find a better way to do this so you can have that quality time. Don't get me wrong. There are my days where I have to tell my kids, not today, but you know what? Friday, daddy's off. The phone's on do not disturb. I may not even bring my phone. Yeah. Well, Dad, what if there's an emergency? We'll deal with it. I don't care. The phone stays home. Well, at one point in time in our lives, we didn't have cell phones in our pockets. My kids are really? Yeah, we were okay. There's going to be somebody close. We're not going that far out into the camping area or out into the sticks, whatever country. There we go. But that's just the thing is we all have a lifeline in life, and that is Jesus Christ. And he teaches us to forgive. He teaches us to break bread and have communion with one another, to forgive one another, not 7 times, but 77 times or 70 times 7, however you want to look at it, whichever version you're reading there. But that, I think that's just one of the big things it's just that time that it's so precious and it's so valuable, and it's the one resource you can't get back.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Absolutely true. I agree with absolutely everything that you said. And family is so important, and the time aspect. I mean, there are choices that I wish I'd made different. But I learned from them, and now I make more calculated decisions. So it's a process, it's a journey, and it's good that we are having this discussion because there's someone in the audience that needs to hear this. There's someone in the audience that heard your words, they heard your heart. They're going to sit down and think about this and make a change. So there's always someone listening. There's always someone that's reaching out for that answer. And I see that you do leadership coaching, you're a consultant, and I know you're a celebrated speaker. So would you like to elaborate on that for the audience, please?
Yeah, the leadership side of it, I've been a part of it for 20 years. I was a part of management as an so let's go even further back than that. I was an Eagle Scout and a leader in our Boy Scout troop. And
wow. Cool.
One of the things that really stuck out to me about being a leader is, and this stems more from my personal development, my personal life, but prior to this leader coming into my life, I had been told very prominently that Kent would be a part of my regular vocabulary, that I would struggle and, just kind of that negativity. And he just looked at me, he said, "Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't."
Yeah.
And the thing is this person was a leader in business. He was the leader. He was our scoutmaster. He was the leader of our troop. But more than anything, he was just a leader from the heart. And even though now 20 plus years later, almost 30 years later, I look at it now like, wow, that really set the stage for where I'm at now. But then, you know, I was an early young general manager of Pizza Hut, which taught me a lot, to say the least. I had to grow up very fast. And then I got into sales and had to learn a lot really fast there. And then, of course, became a firefighter. And so all the things that I learned from that really just hammered home the importance of having that leader, that coach, that guide that helps set the stage for what's next. Here's where we were. Here's where we're at. Where do we want to go? And without leaders, we don't take those steps. And so to look at how an organization is communicating with their people. I mean, if you're doing it, like one of my luncheon speeches is don't check the box communication. Don't send something, just check the box and say you did it. Have intent and purpose behind it. Because if you don't, and you just keep sending these pointless things out that no one's reading, and then the one time you put something that's important in, most of them aren't going to see it. I'll just be honest with you. And communication is one of the number one breakdowns of organizations. And so I do everything I can to alleviate that and just to teach people, listen, lead authentically, have an open door policy, and just be that dinner table moment for someone in their life that I speak about as being a fireman, because that's really what we need. We need authentic connection. But it takes somebody who's willing to step up and step out of their comfort zone and to lead and show the way. Leaders don't just tell you the way, they show the way, they go the way. But if we don't have someone who's doing that, we don't have someone who's teaching that and expressing that from an authentic place in their lives, like that leader did for me when I was 14, I wouldn't be on this podcast with you right now. You know, Jesus hadn't come down and showed us what servant leadership is actually like. Like he came, he said, I did not come to be served, but to serve. And so that's really the stem of being a coach to me is being able to express that leaders are there to serve. Sir Richard Branson, you know, owner of Virgin Mobile and Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Cruises, Virgin Space, I can't remember what all he owns, but he always said that he was always raised to treat the janitor the same respect as the CEO. And that as leaders, your number one customer is not the customers and clients. It's those you serve. It's your employees. And so the big thing for me is that good leaders create more followers, which there's nothing wrong with that. But to be great, to be truly great, and look at history, look at examples of people who say that's a great leader, they made greater leaders than themselves. In their own respective areas. Does that mean that because I guide somebody and help them speak makes them standing on stages or, you know, doing virtual events like this, that means they're better than me as a speaker? Maybe, maybe not. I don't care. It's not the point. My point is to guide them to their next level of greatness. It's not just being greater than me. It's about the cooperation, not the competition. And so having stronger leadership is going to build a stronger world. But it's got to be done positively, and the positive part of that is it's the three great eyes of leadership is the key here. It's positive influence, massive impact, and when I say massive, it's not just in the numbers of people; it's quantitative and qualitative. It's in the heart. What's the impact? You know, that Scoutmaster, he impacted a lot of us boys. You know, shaping us into men and Boy Scouts. But what he also did was in my heart. I'll never forget that. So that was a direct impact. That was a qualitative impact. And then when we do that, we have influence and impact. When we bring those two together, we lead happier, healthier, more fulfilled, inspired lives. We got to get to the spirit of it. And I believe that's a core component to leadership.
Absolutely true. Very, very true. We have to look at these things, and I'm glad that we are unpacking this, because there are people in the audience that have never thought of it that way. So I love the fact that you mentioned the communication. I know you've heard the phrase that, We come from communication. There's a difference between communicating and connecting. And I did a live the other day, and I said, in the ministry, we learn how to communicate effectively because we have to plant churches, and we have to go into the community. I love also what I want to mention before I forget is that when you mentioned the table at the fire department, you mentioned that it's like having communion, community, communication, all of that is very important. These are the things that we have to unpack. But I always put a step in the middle. I always say we can all communicate, Children, little babies, they communicate. They talk with their eyes and they laugh and they dance and they play. But then we grow up and we kind of develop emotionally and we communicate effectively. And before we can go over to connection, we have to reach that step. We have to first communicate effectively. Let people, and that's why I'm not very fond of WhatsApp and those things. I actually like voice notes and things, if I'm not if I don't know people so well, because sometimes I'll send a message and I know how I was stating it, but it doesn't, it's not received on the other end the way I meant it. So I like to communicate effectively by speaking face to face with people or sending voice notes so that they can hear the tone of my voice, because people can misunderstand. And then when you've communicated effectively, that's when you connect. And I feel that you're very good with the public speaking because you connect. It doesn't take much for you to connect with people, and that's a gift. It's not everybody that can do that. So I believe all those years working with the people that you helped, running into those buildings, sitting around the table with your team, coming home to your family, being a good father and a husband, that has taught you how to communicate effectively. And there were reasons. I mean, I've been passed over for positions many, many times. And I, in the moment, it didn't feel good. And I look back and I say, thank God, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here today. So God has created that whole life for you where He taught you how to communicate effectively. And look how big your reach is now. So everything He's planned, for your good. So I'm very, very excited about what the future holds for you. I just want to mention that because it's in my spirit to say that to you.
I appreciate that. That's the funny thing about speaking and reaching out to people, is connecting is something that it's a lost art. It's like leadership. Leadership is an art. It's something that, everybody just immediately wants to paint this perfect picture and have this masterpiece. And really, art is about discovery. It's a science, and science is about discovery. It's about experimentation. And when I say that, what I mean by that is it's from a speaking standpoint, a leadership standpoint, it comes from the inside first. And a lot of it's those experiences. When I share my story, especially my early childhood story, my mom left my dad and I, we were 1.5 years old. I had a stepmom who came in that, God bless her, we get along a lot better now than we did, but it was not an ideal situation. And there was things that happened between my dad and I that were not ideal, and a lot of just things that a child at my age should not have seen or gone through, but I did. And I look back now and I actually thank God for that. And people are like, how? It's like, because one, I've seen how Christ can work in my life. So I know He can work in yours, because God can come in and change this guy. Because I always tell everybody, I used to be a professional pessimist. I was a professional pessimist. Yeah. Oh, I was Mr. Negativity. You could have written a comedy on me for negativity. It was bad. I did not smile as much as I do now. And so, but when I share my story, people are, well, no wonder he's so angry. I sit back, it's like, that sucks. Is that really how I'm communicating with people? Is that really how I'm connecting with people?
Yeah.
And I've always spoke. I've never been afraid of being on stage. I love speaking. I love giving information and knowledge, whether it's, from a formal teaching standpoint versus more informal, like do an interview like this, or just being on stage and getting to share my story, and maybe questions gets asked, maybe not. But the authentic connection comes from the fact that it's like, I once felt like this. They always tell you when you're a speaker, when they teach you as a speaker, as a coach, is 90% of the time, the person you connect with the most is the person you once were.
Wow. I love
And I sat
that.
back and I thought, man, but here's the thing, Juanita,
Yeah.
the influence I was giving was negative. So I was connecting negativity with negativity.
Oh, I see.
I wasn't connecting positivity to fix negativity or positivity to grow more positivity.
Yes.
And so, yes, I could get on stage, I could be at the pulpit, I could be speaking and everything, but I didn't speak from a full, authentic self until 10 years ago when one of my professors actually called me out for it. At the time, he'd been teaching for 30 plus years. And the guy had been teaching longer than I've been alive. And I say that respectfully. And I was the president of our club at the school. And of all places to be the negative person I was in psychology club. So, and I was on a clinical route. So, but this professor, this professor and I had gotten along really well. We connected on so many levels. And here I was the president, and we had our big barbecue. And, I'm the president, so everybody's looking at you to be the rah-rah-ree person, right? And the cheerleader. And I looked around, and ironically enough, there was this email that got sent out to all the club presidents, or a message. I can't remember how it went out, but it said, hey, FYI, Saturday is going to be such a great day on campus life. Such and such is doing hamburgers. Such and such is doing pizza. Such and such is doing donuts. Such and such is doing Chipotle.
Yeah.
And Chipotle to college kids, if you don't know what Chipotle is, you can look it up. But Chipotle to college kids, let me tell you, if it's going to be free, they're eating. But this was all the same time, same day. And I was looking around and I was like, I don't know why we just set out 20 tables. Why we just waste our time setting out 20 tables? We have 100 chairs out here. We're not going to fill them. We should have set out 2. Such pizza. And finally, he looked at me. I thought he was going to hit me with the spatula. He probably should have, quite honestly. I'd have been okay with it. Honestly, folks, I would have. But speaking of martial arts, right? But hard-headed guy. But he looked at me and he's holding this spatula and he goes, you are the most pessimistic person I've ever met in my entire life. And here I sat back thinking some of the healing I had, some of the mentors and leaders prior to him, that Scoutmaster and everything that I felt, had course corrected me. While yes, I was reaching beyond what the stars could give me, because I tell everybody to reach beyond what the stars could. You don't do the shoot for the moon for things. Shoot past that. Reach beyond it, and if you land somewhere in between, okay, great. Learn from it. And then now keep shooting for it. Don't stop. But what I hadn't realized was I didn't have the forgiveness in my heart. I wasn't making that connection. And so the connection I had with people was very inauthentic and was very negative. And I just stood there and I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Here I thought I was this teddy bear. I'd gotten voted president. I thought I was well liked, and I was a well liked person, I like to think. Yes. And at least there's some of them are still friends with me. So I guess I did something right. But all joking aside, I had to pull my leadership team together. And we had other people there. A few people showed up and pulled aside. I said, we're going to fix this right now. They said, fix what? I said, we're going to fix me. Again, psychology students, all of them took one look at me. No, we're not fixing you today. I was like, no, we are going to fix my attitude. I owe you guys an apology. Leaders don't do what I'm doing right now. Leaders don't tear you down. They build you up. And all I've done is tear this down. This event's going to be great. I would like this, and this to be finished. We're going to finish it with excellence. And we're going to set out the plates in a different way. Like I just kind of changed how the setting was going to be, make it more positive. Ironically enough, and not necessarily because of me, we set a record for attendance and signups that night.
My goodness.
And he took one look at me and he goes, hey, Mr. Negative, we just ran out of hamburgers. Mr. We're not going to have enough, or we're going to have too many. And so the valuable lesson in that, from a leadership standpoint, from a personal development standpoint, was when you leave with negativity, you're going to grow negativity. So what do you want to grow? What do you want to grow? What do you want to grow in your own life? What do you want to manifest in your life? How do you want people to see you? An exercise that I had taught to me that now I teach to others too, especially from personal development, is write your own obituary sometime. Oh. What do you think what do you want people to say about you? What do you think they're going to say about you?
That's a good idea. Wow.
Yeah, it's hardcore if you were in the mindset that I was in back then. So I learned that after all of this. I actually learned that just a couple years ago. But I did it. And I was like, man, this is great. And because I was rehashing my story, working on writing my first book, been getting on podcasts, sharing my story, I rewrote it one time from that person. It was horrible. It was like, there's only going to be 3 people at my funeral. Because I was just that negative. And so when people ask me, why do you smile so much? How do you forget? How did you forgive? How did you forgive? Honestly, I just did it. And so during that time, one of my pastor friends, her and her husband were my pastors at my church. I was the youth pastor. So not only were they my friends, my brothers and sisters in Christ, they were also my bosses. They knew me very well. And I brought all this up to her because her and him, and she was like, she goes, Chris, it's because you haven't forgiven yet. And the first person you haven't forgiven is yourself.
Yeah.
And she goes, and you haven't forgiven your mom. You haven't forgiven your stepmom. You haven't forgiven your dad. You haven't forgiven. And I mean, and she knew me so well. She was able to run through the list of people that I would complain about or I would blame for all my problems. And here I was at the time, almost 30 years old, still blaming people for stuff that happened in my childhood. It's not to say I wasn't wrong. And I'm not saying if you're listening to this and you're going, oh, you're just acting like everything's easy go, Daisy's. It's not. It's not.
Yeah.
You got to take baby steps that'll lead to giant leaps. I'm not where I'm at today. I'm not the Chris Tice I am today. That's being interviewed by Juanita that I was even yesterday, let alone 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I'm not that person. How did I get here? How did I get to be in this speaker who wants to connect with people, who wants to show them the love of Christ, who wants to show them the love of a father, the love of a family, the love of a firefighter, the love of someone who just wants to help people?
Yeah.
That's what I've been called to do. When I went back to school, it was about a 10-year gap between earning my 2-year degree and going for my 4-year degree.
Yeah.
I was introduced to the admissions counselors by the religion department, because that's who I was hanging out with. I was hanging out in the campus ministries group and made friends there. And the guy said, oh, so you want to do religion and philosophy? I was like, no, I know what classes you have to take, and that's not for me. He goes, what? I was like, no, I wouldn't pass some of those classes because I knew what they took, and it just wasn't my passion. He said, well, then why are you here? I was like, I don't know. I think I should go back to school. Honestly, didn't know that answer. I didn't. There's a little more to that. I'll get to it. But I just said, man, I just want to help people. He goes, you need to go see the psychology department. And I ended up meeting that professor who put me in my place. And so at the end of that day, I'd spent, I don't know how many hours inside this building. It's a beautiful building on campus. And it's at these concrete steps. And one of the things they're very proud of is the grass. The grass is beautiful there. Yeah, and I'll never forget, I walked out on top of these concrete steps and I looked down at this paperwork, and it dawned on me. I was going back to school. I was thinking about going back to school. I didn't even realize the whole time I had signed the dotted lines. I didn't realize I had a class schedule in my hands. I was the youth pastor at my church. I was a full-time firefighter. I was a single dad at the time. And here I was going to take 15 college credit hours for a psychology degree that I didn't even understand what I was getting into. And all of a sudden I hear this. And I knew that sound. It was air brakes. Being a fireman, big trucks use air brakes. And you hear that sound, you know what it is. And I looked up, and it was 2 flatbed semi trucks of brand new grass. I went, they've got a sucker button under that desk. And we got another one, beep, get some more grass, right? And I had to smile because what it was, and I didn't realize it at the time, but what it was it was God saying, I got this. You went through this as a child. Now we're gonna cut that up. And you're gonna forgive those people. And we've had those conversations. I've had those conversations with those people. And I've said, you know what? I did a lot of wrong. I'm sorry. And I've forgiven myself in this. And I forgive you for the wrong that happened to me. And there's so many stories like that out there. But if we're not willing to speak, we're not willing to open up, we're not willing to bring it to the dinner table. Yeah. You're just going to be a professional pessimist like me, like I was. And it's not a fun life. It's not. I mean, I was a very unhealthy 20-something-year-old at the time, and that's not good. And so to be able to say that, not only just say that feels good, but it also trains your brain. That's a big component of what I teach, is train your brain to seek that positivity, to have that influence in your life. But you got to do it here. It's got to happen here so it translates here. So that way when it comes out of here, it's authentic. And that's how I love connecting with people.
Yeah.
That's why I just lean into life, and I lean into those that want to learn, that whether it's someone supporting me or I support them, or, you know, one combination or the other. That's why it's so important to be able to do that. We have to come to the dinner table. We have to be able to talk about it. And we not only just talk about it, we take action on fixing it.
Beautiful. That's so true. And you know, I had to chuckle because I drive my kids nuts sometimes, because if you were a professional pessimist, I have to confess I'm a professional optimist, and it's not always a good thing because I'm not always realistic about everything. So I drive them up the walls because something will happen and I'll be like, no, it's fine. We still have this and this and this to do. And no, don't worry about the weather. And sometimes they just stop and I say, listen, just be realistic about it. You can't be optimistic about everything all the time. And I had to learn that. You know, that it's not always good just to see the positive. So I think the balance, you've brought me balance now, because, you know, we have to see the negative and of course the positive, and then in the middle, be realistic about it. But still, you know, when we are younger, we grow and we are often pessimistic about things. I've also been there, you know, when I was younger, and really the things I went through in the ministry, and this is a psychological thing, and you studied that, so I don't know what you call it, but I take a situation and I try and look for whatever good there is, and I try to blow that up in my mind, so as to not think about the negative part, so that I can just get through it, you know, tricking myself a little bit, so that I can just feel, okay, I can get through this. So thank you for sharing that. I will forever remember the event where everybody pitched up and all the burgers were sold out.
Well, and I want to stop you there for a second, because, and I may mention this earlier, train your brain, don't trick your brain. Yeah. You're training your brain. And I know that's a play on words for anybody. It's like, oh, he's just changing the language. But that's true. Changing the language can change everything. And so, and Juanita, I'm not knocking what you're doing. I just want to expand upon that of what you're saying, because yes, she's tricking it. She's absolutely right. But it also becomes a training, because what she's doing is she's expanding that positivity into what is possible. Because I used to always look at what can go wrong instead of what can go right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the polar opposite of Juanita. I mean, back in the day, Juanita and I would never have chatted. Or if we would have, we probably would not have liked each other. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you, Juanita, and the audience, because I was that negative. I hated positivity with a passion. I hated it. I mean, I'd love to laugh and have fun and everything. But when I looked at a lens, it was always limited. When I looked at a lens of opportunity, it was always limited because, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't. Why am I saying I can't? Well, because I was conditioned for that. Yeah. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Just because I was conditioned for that doesn't mean that I can't start to trick the mind and then train my brain to say, no, that's not it. And that's what you've done. And I'm proud of you for that. And I appreciate that, because so many more people need to understand that. Yeah. Our brains are just a web, a sponge and a web of opportunity and possibility. Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? And when you have that negativity rising up, you start to trick it to say, no, this can be positive. I mean, how can your, I'll give you a great example. I was proud of myself for not losing it. My 7-year-old broke a window in the house the other day. Oh, it's like, 1, he wasn't listening. 2, he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing. 3, we'd already told him twice not to do it. What it was, he was standing up in a chair, leaning on it.
Oh, that's so dangerous.
And it went back and hit the window. And right before I just absolutely lost it, 1, I made sure I looked at his face, because not only was he scared, but he knew he was in trouble. But the bigger part of it was I had to take a step back, which is not something I would have done with my oldest son. And I've apologized to him for this, because he sees a different dad now than he did when he was 7. But not that I'm proud of that. It's just the truth. I had to trick my brain, though, to think, what a horrible situation. Well, the positive is, 1, he only broke 1 pane. 2, it's fixable. And 3, and more important than anything, he's not hurt. So what leads into the 4th point of all that? We all learned from it. I learned that I don't have to lose it and get mad just because something happened. But we also have to understand that there is something to learn here. One, he needs to be more careful.
Yes.
Two, probably should have just taken him off the chair and saying, you do. So, but parenting 101, I guess, right? So anyway, so that's the thing though, is we have to learn from life's lessons. And yes, it is a tricking of the brain. So again, I'm not saying you were wrong, but I also want to expand upon that it's not just once you start to trick it and you start to see it, now you have to train it to work on it, train and development. That's why when I spoke on leadership from a technical aspect, I said training and development, the thing I didn't do, and I always usually do this with my hands, where I go training and development must go hand in hand. You're not going to train on something once and know it inside and out. You've got to continually develop on it and hone your craft.
That's so true. That's so true. Now, when you explained, actually, it starts by tricking, but it's actually training. When you explained that, I actually saw 2020, playing out before me. And if it wasn't for that training of the mind, because my mom passed away, my church closed, my marriage failed, I was busy with my master's, and I just, what I did? I did the following. When the church closed, I said, well, now I have a bigger reach, I'm going to go online. And that's what I did. I said to the children, well, we stuck at home, but we've got more time for each other and I can reach more people. And when I was busy with the master, said, well, now I don't have to drive so far. I'm going to communicate via email. When my mom passed away, I said to myself, she's not in pain anymore. So it's not about what I want. I said to them, release her energy, let her go, because now she's not in pain anymore. So that's the type of thing I do. And I see that shaped, especially my son, because I see when things don't go the way he planned it, he always finds another way, to do something. And I think that kind of rubbed off. And what you did with your son 2 days ago, just by doing that, by handling it that way, it rubbed off on him, and it's gonna alter his approach to crisis and to things, in his life. So that is very good. God is very good. He protects our children. I'm so glad he didn't get hurt.
You and me both. I've seen stuff like that, and it's not good. Obviously, not good. Anybody can use their imagination however they want. I'm not going to describe the situations, but it's not good. And honestly, that kind of flashed in my head, and I think that was part of what kept me calm. And that's something that being a firefighter taught me was your job is to bring calm to the chaos. And that's probably the biggest point of your job, is bring one way or another. You got to bring calm to the chaos. And so I approach my life that way now. And that's something that I fail at it. I fail as a parent. I fail as a father. Two things I don't want anybody to do is, one, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm not perfect. And number two, don't vilify anybody in my life or even in your life. We have to have that forgiveness. Train your brain to do that. And it took me a long time to get to that point. It took me a long time to even just be able to share my story. It takes a certain courage for us to do what we do and to say the things we say and to come out. And that doesn't mean you have to be, although being on this podcast is wonderful. So anybody thinking about it, holler at Juanita. She's amazing. Okay. But also, it doesn't mean you have to get on stage. You don't have to be the next greatest speaker, world renowned, whatever. Speak to people in your community. Speak to your people in your church. As a youth pastor, my goodness, calm to chaos. Wow. There was a lot there. There was a lot to unpack in that. And, people, a lot of folks will sit here and say, oh, it's kids. No, people are hungry. We're hungry. But what are we feeding ourselves? What are you being fed? What are you taking in? If it's a bunch of negativity, it's time to knock it off. It really is. Focus on the positive. And things like a broken window become, thank God you're safe. Let's not let that happen again. Let's figure out how to fix it. Instead of, I can't believe you did that. Because that's what went through Chris's head. I promise you that. Chris about exploded. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of proud of that. Okay, fine. I'm going on a pedestal for a little bit here. I'm proud of not going off on that because I wanted to. The inner dad in me wanted to lose it. And I was like, no, be the father. Be the forgiving father. So
yeah. Good. That's wonderful. And there's someone in the audience, Father, that needs to hear that hasn't reached that level yet, that maybe has to adapt the way they speak to their children. And I love the fact that you're a believer and that you love God. And I wanted to ask, you spoke about going and praying to the Lord. And worshiping and praising him. How do you experience the Lord? How does he speak to you? I know sometimes people hear him audibly. I feel him in nature, and when I get a feeling a couple of times in a row to do something, I know God is prompting me to do it. So how does that work for you in your belief system?
You know what? I'll go back to being a kid again. I've actually been raised in 7 different denominations, all Christian. And how God speaks to me is through freedom and faith. And what I mean by that is the freedom to worship him in the way that he calls us to worship. You know, one of the things, I love music. I grew up on music. My family is a family of musicians, classically trained in some areas, but also grew up on the old classics of rock and roll and things. And then, you know, being an 80s, 90s kid, a lot of hard rock, a lot of rap, you know, so music has always been, country too, even, has always been a huge part of it. But I even look at music culturally speaking too. You know, it's not just, you know, what I hear here in America. It's, you know, different instruments, different ways of expressing yourself. And I think one of the things, and this really leads to the importance of the prayer that night when I was thinking about leaving the fire department, the song that was on was King of My Heart.
Wow.
I forgot who sings it. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry if they hear this. Don't get mad at me. But it is just, you know, the crescendo part is they're just singing so hard that you are good, you are good, you are good. Whoa, oh, and it was just like, it was so perfect. I was crying, and it was God just speaking to me in that moment, or just remind me how good he is. Like, yes, you have this injury, but look at all these storms in your life I've brought you through. And then, of course, his word is living and active. So then I had to dig into the word. And 2 things that really come to mind when I think about my faith is Jesus made naps cool. Okay. Jesus made napping okay. He said naps are okay. Do you know what verse I'm talking about? If you don't, this is not a trick question or anything, but do you know what verse I'm talking about? Where he was napping? He was napping on the boat during a storm.
Oh, yes.
Dude was taking a nap. Jesus took a nap during a storm. And what happened? The disciples freaked out. They got all chaotic and, oh my God, Jesus, save us, save us, save us. He's like, are you kidding me, right? You really just woke me up for this?
Yeah.
And the boat's getting ready to based on what the Bible says, the boat was getting ready to capsize, right? And she's like, oh my goodness. All right, hold on. All right. Stop, wind, right? No one exactly like that. No one get mad at me, but But I look at that, and then, you know, I also look at when he walked on the water. What happened when Peter took his eyes off Jesus? Took his eyes off Jesus, started to sink, and Jesus still reached down and said, you know what? Your belief is shaken. Why did you stop believing? Why did you take your eyes off me? And he grabs his hand and he pulls him out of the water. And I can't even begin to tell you how many times Jesus has woke up from his nap and said, Chris, the storm is calm. And I'm not saying Jesus is napping all the time, folks. Don't take that too literal. Is that realistically, we're the ones taking the nap on our faith.
Yes. Amen.
We're the ones forgetting that his hand is always there. We just got to keep our eyes on him. And so for me, it's that, you know, of all the different denominational things I've been taught and all the read this book, read that book. No, I read the one book.
Yes.
Now, if there's insights from other books, I'll gladly read those. I take that into account, but I will still believe the one book because it's sharper than any double-edged sword. And so anytime I speak Jesus into the storms of my life, I know he's not truly napping. I know he's not asleep. It was me. And there's the old poem, Footprints. Do you know the poem, Footprints?
Is it the one where there's 2 and then there's one set?
One set of footprints. And the guy looks at God and says, yeah, that was the hardest times of my life. Why did you leave me? You know, i.e. taking a nap, I guess, if you will, if we're going to keep that going. And God goes, no, my dear child, it was then that I carried you.
Amen.
And that's what's guided me through all this. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm coaching. That's why I'm consulting. That's why I'm speaking. That's why I'm doing all the things that God has called me to do is because simply that, you know, if God's going to do that for me, why am I not doing that for others? Go therefore and make other disciples. Love God, love others. And that's my driving force. That's my why. You know, my children behind me, that's my why. Why did I become a firefighter? So I could help others. Why am I a father? So I could help children. Why am I a husband? So I could help my wife. Why am I a coach? So I could help organizations, different people, personal development. Why do I consult? So things are more effective. But it's all stems from just having that faith. When I share my experiences from the religion standpoint and all the different churches I was in and all the things I was told, I've had several pastors go, "You're still a believer?"
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
I am. And it's not that they're asking that in a crass or even sarcastic sort of way, as much as it is that a lot of people who've gone through what I've gone through quit.
Yeah.
And I sit back and I think about that, and I think about your question, Juanita, what really drives me. And I think the first time I'm going to say this out loud is just, if God's not going to quit on me, why am I quitting on him?
Yeah.
If God doesn't quit on me, he's not quitting on others. Why am I quitting on others? That's my job, is to create a positive influence for massive impact that inspires others. That's my job. That's my title. That's my mission statement. But all the times, and for anybody out there that's doubting or saying, "Oh, you're just, you're just bringing up the Bible thing, you're pulling the Jesus card." No, I'm not. You've heard me say my story. I can tell you right now, the storms of my life, the times I took my eyes off Jesus, I was sinking. I was sinking.
Yes.
Fast. The times I took my eyes off Jesus, I was drowning. And as soon as I spoke that name into my problems, what the devil was trying to keep me from doing, as soon as I spoke that name, it cleared up. Doesn't mean I got it all figured out. I mean, Jesus even says, "In this world you will have trouble. Take heart, I've overcome the world." Take heart means take faith. Have that faith. And that's my driving factor into how that benefits me. I mean, that benefits me physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and psychologically. And it's because of all the different connections we talked about, the communicating these things with other people that God has put into my life that has made me who I am today. My identity is found in Christ. And I've lost that identity more than once. Going back to leaving the fire department, I struggled with that so bad because I am a firefighter. Like it's hard to let go of that identity. I know I'm not the only one that'll say that. And that's not just firefighting. That's anything you've just devoted and dedicated your life to. And yet, when that gets taken away, well, what do you have now? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? How do you move on? And you just got to take that step back. You got to get on your knees. You got to say, "God, what do you want? What's your will for my life in this?" Again, without that, I'm not here on this wonderful interview today. I'm just not.
Amen. Amen. I'm thinking that which the enemy has intended for evil, God will turn into good.
Amen.
Ultimately.
Amen. I talked about having no regrets, and
Beautiful.
I have regrets. I don't live in them. And the reason why is because I know that I have a forgiving Father who will say, "Okay, let's hit the reset button." And I'm taking this quote from Ed Milet, who I love, and I owe him a debt of gratitude on so many levels. And I haven't even met him personally yet being the key word there. But he always says that, and I've borrowed this multiple times. So Ed, when you listen to this, thank you. But he says, when I get to heaven, I just picture heaven as this. When I get up there, God's going to have me meet the version of me that he wanted me to become. I don't want to shake hands with a stranger. I want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Yeah.
I've been through what I've been through, but what has happened hasn't happened to me. It's happened for me. So I can be the servant leader that God has called me to be.